taken root in 70 sites across the country, as well as the UK. Please welcome Dave Anderson.
Thank you. It's good to be here. 10 years ago, I was a foster parent and I worked with the foster care system. And I remember when my foster son, when he took off his shirt for the first time, he had a big burn mark on his chest. And I thought, wow, Nick, what happened? And he talked about what happened to him and then began to struggle with some of the experience the rest of his life. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool if we as a church could prevent things like this from happening? Wouldn't it be cool if we could find ways to intervene in families before really bad things happen? Because the child welfare system is restricted to help until something bad has happened. And then once it's happened, then all these things happen to help families. But what if we created a system that intervened before that happened? So I did some research and I thought, well, what if we had hundreds and hundreds of families to open up their homes and take in a child that's not theirs before a parent abuses them, before they have to go into foster care, to come alongside of them, provide a safe place for them, come alongside that parent and help them get back on their feet. So I had this idea. I recruited a couple people. They said, you have to go meet with the head of DCFS. I'm from Chicago. I met with a guy, told him my vision, hundreds of people doing this. He said, great idea, never work, don't bother wasting your time. I'm like, well, why won't it work? And he said, these people are all Christians. They only protest things. They don't do anything proactive. I was pastoring a church at that time. I struggled with that myself. And then he said this. He said, children are not valuable in our society. And he said, unless they're your own, or unless you adopt them, there is no one else looking out for someone else's child. We're forced to do that. We try to do it. The only thing we can do is pay for beds and pay for safety. But there is no one doing that. That's not how it was throughout history. The church was the significant driver. In fact, foster care is relatively a new idea. It's only been around since World War II. Who was doing this? Who was caring for the most vulnerable people group in our society? It was the church. And so he said, but don't come crying to me if it doesn't work. So I said, okay, let's recruit families. Let's see how many people we can get to join us. And I went to spoke at this church, and that guy came up to me and said, Dave, what's a theology behind SafeFamiles? I said, well, orphan and widows and all that stuff. He said, that doesn't count. There's not a calling for the church to do this. And I said, what about hospitality? Ancient hospitality, not Martha Stewart hospitality, not House and Gardens hospitality. Hospitality that was a key strategy of the spread of the gospel throughout the first 5 centuries. It means love of strangers, and it was done in our home. That's what we're trying to do, is resurrect ancient hospitality. And by doing so, we can eradicate child abuse from our society. So we got going. The big question is, how do you help people love a child that is not their own? How do you help someone love a child when there's a parent connected to them? And if we could do that, though, if we could create this movement of people that loves children that aren't our own, we could care for any child for any reason and then raise the value of children in our society. So we've been experimenting this for a number of years now, 10 years. In Chicago, where I'm from, we have nearly 1,000 host families who take in nearly 1,000 children every year. And we're rivaling foster care. In Cook County, they take in 1,100, and we take in 900. And providing a trajectory for families in critical situations and an alternative to help them get back on their feet. Last week, the director called me from DCFS. It's not always a good thing. He said this. He said, Dave, we like what you're doing. Every child you take in saves us $30,000, by the way. I don't know if you know that. Every child saves us this money. And we want to do this experiment, and we want to do this thing called social impact bonds. But we have to prove that you guys are helping kids that would go into foster care. So let's do this deal. What if you take in all the neglected children that are below 5 in this one area. Now, I don't know if you know this, 60% of kids who go into foster care go in because of neglect. The majority of them go in because they're under the age of 5. What if you do that, and we'll do it over here, we think you're better, because somehow there's something different about your families that can turn these lives around. And let's experiment, let's research, let's have University of Chicago research. What in the world are you doing that does that? So we have an incredible opportunity to take on this incredible group of kids and families who are in difficult needs and provide an alternative. It's a challenge for us. What I found is what a lot of these families need is hope. They need mobilized hope. They need tangible hope. They need relational hope. We got a call last year from a hospital that says, we have a little baby that doesn't have a brain. The baby's going to die in a couple months. We've called for weeks. There's no one in Chicago that will take that baby. Well, the last one, they said they'll take them in a year and a half. That child doesn't have a year and a half. Is there any way you guys can do it? We put it out we have this text thing, and within an hour, a family showed up at the hospital and said, we'll take them as if it's their own. And raise that child until that child died, because children are valuable even if they don't have a brain. And you know what? When we do this together, it grabs the attention of the waiting world who are watching. After we did this, the entire hospital gave up their Christmas bonuses just to give to us, because they were so moved by the fact that who are people like this who do these things? My wife and I took in a little child who, 6 years old, a couple of weeks ago, and her mom was a prostitute. And I began to love her child. So I went to her and I said, we love your child and we think you're doing a great job. She began to cry and said, nobody ever told me that. And I said, we'll come alongside of you and help you. And then I said, what can you do? What do you need? And she said, I need a notebook. Because I'm learning some things, I just want to write it down. Well, I have 1 million notebooks. And I gave her a notebook, and the issue is we all have excess. We need to release our excess, and we could change our world. Thank you so much.